Welcome back to Purpose Driven Church for Unificationists. We're on day 41, and we're continuing the section on designing a seeker-sensitive service, or the way I say it, creating a great service in general. So we've been talking about different aspects of service, ways in which they can be more appealing and comfortable and exciting for people. And he's now talking about music. So he has he calls the music, he uses the word impact as an acronym for the flow and the desire to create that they create with their music. So impact, I is inspire, movement, IM. And so he says this is what we want to do with the opening song. We use a bright, upbeat number that makes you want to tap your foot, clap, or at least smile. We want to loosen up the tense muscles of uptight visitors. When your body is relaxed, your attitude is less defensive. Also, in general, when people come after a week of whatever they're dealing with in their life, sometimes you need to loosen up a little bit first. He says the difference the opening song makes is absolutely amazing. Then P is for praise. We then move to joyful songs about God. A is for adoration, move to a more meditative, intimate song to God. The pace is slowed. C is for commitment. This song gives people an opportunity to affirm or reaffirm a commitment to God. And then T is for tie it all together. The very last thing we do is end the service on a very short, upbeat song. So the next part is all about making visitors feel comfortable. He talks about how when a visitor comes to your church, they've already made an opinion about your church within the first 10 minutes after they arrive. They're deciding whether or not to come back way before the person gives a sermon. And he says the first impressions are very difficult to change, so you need to think thoroughly through what your first impressions should be, what you want your first impressions of your visitors to be. You don't really want to leave that up to chance. And he's just talking about people. He says, dealing with visitors, it's important to understand that most likely their first feeling or emotion is going to be fear. Especially if they're coming to a place where it's unfamiliar to them and totally new people. They're really wondering what is going to happen, and are they going to feel welcomed there. So he says because visitors are filled with apprehension and anxiety, your first objective with them should be to make sure they're relaxed. Communication is blocked when a person is afraid. He says there's certain practical things that you can do to help with this. For example, you can reserve the best parking spots for visitors. He says at Saddleback, all pastors and staff park on the dirt, and only visitors get preferred parking spots, which is very contrary to many churches where they reserve the best spots for the elders and the leaders, which really emphasizes the priorities. He says station greeters outside your building. We believe that welcoming visitors is so important. We have 4 different kinds of welcome ministries: parking attendants, greeters, hosts, and ushers. He goes on to talk a while about that. He says, in your church, your welcome ministers are the most important people to visitors because they make contact in that crucial first 10 minutes. Be sure to use people who project personal warmth and smile easily. It is also important to select greeters and ushers who match your target. If you want to reach young couples, use young couples. If you want to reach teenagers, use teenagers. If you want to reach retirees, use retirees. In many churches, the greeters are the oldest members. And he just gives a couple practical points too. Don't identify greeters with badges. Greeters with badges make visitors feel like they're being welcomed by officials of the church. Just tell the greeters to simply be themselves, friendly members. You can set up information tables outside your buildings, place directional signs everywhere. He says, clearly identify the main entrances of your building, the nursery, and especially the bathrooms. Visitors should not have to ask where the bathrooms are, which is funny because people are always asking us where the bathrooms are. It says have tape music playing when people enter your building. Most public buildings have music playing in the background. There's a reason for that. It's because it relaxes people. He says silence is scary to unchurched visitors. If you were to walk into a large room filled with 200 people and no one was talking, wouldn't you wonder what was going on? But if you were to walk into a room and everyone was talking to each other, you would not feel self-conscious at all. He says there's a place for silence and worship, but it's not at the beginning of a seeker service. Have you ever seen a sign over a church auditorium that says "Enter in silence"? That is the last thing you want in a seeker service. You want the atmosphere before the service starts to be alive and happy and contagious with joy. He said, we noticed an interesting phenomenon. The louder you play background music, the more animatedly people talk. If you play quiet music, people talk softly. But if people are talking normally to each other and upbeat music is playing, it eases their fears. They notice that people are enjoying each other and are happy to be there. They notice that there is life in the church. And another tip is to allow visitors to remain anonymous. Once visitors are seated, we don't bother them or single them out. There's no necessary reason to have to pull people out, and especially if it's not going to help them. And he says, ironically, the way many churches welcome visitors actually makes them feel more uncomfortable than if they had just left them alone. I've seen this happen many times in our own church, where people would have felt more comfortable if certain people hadn't approached them at all. It's kind of interesting. So that's all I'm going to cover for today, but we'll continue talking about that tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Bye.